Hey Powrsuitors, we've just released the dates for our 2024 Power Sessions in Christchurch, Wellington, Auckland, Melbourne and Sydney. We'd love to meet you in person for our month-long transformative leadership program specifically designed for women. Save your spot at powrsuit.com. Welcome to Powrup, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts Nat and Kristen as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
Happy New Year! And we're kicking off 2024 with a confession. We have just recorded this podcast and decided it wasn't worth your time. So we're re-recording. A couple of weeks at the beach, surf casting and sunbathing and swimming have not been good for our brain.
It was quite funny. Within about 6 minutes of recording, I knew it was a bit of a train wreck, but we just kept going, which is totally against what we're talking about today.
I know. I think we've just given ourselves a massive example because basically what we wanted to talk about today is at the end of 2023, we talked to a lot of Powrsuitors who were burnt out, overwhelmed, exhausted. People were crawling towards the holidays. Like I kept using that term. We were like clawing towards the end of the year. And so we thought we'd title this podcast, How to Give Fewer F's. And that's because at the end of last year, we'd used them all up. Everyone was so exhausted. So we're hoping at the beginning of this year, we can give less of them away so that we've got more to have at the end of the year for the important things like surfing and swimming and forgetting how to podcast.
Here's our redo one. But look, what we're focused on today is actually sharing this concept of 80-20 because we think moving into 2024 with a real deep understanding of this 80-20 rule is going to help avoid some of the burnout and overwhelm that we all experienced last year. So shall we start with, firstly, what it is?
Yes. So the 80-20 rule came about from an Italian dude called Pareto, we think. And
you'll have heard of Pareto principle. So,
yes. And so
there's a guy. Of course it was a guy.
He's a guy.
Yeah.
And he is a polymath, which, as it turns out, means he has wide and varied knowledge. And he figured out that 80% of Italy's land was owned by 20% of the population. So then fast forward a few years, another dude, and I forget his name, sorry, other dude, recognized that 80-20 rule actually applies a lot wider. And we tend to find across all areas of life and work that 20% of the effort results in 80% of the outcome or result, or 20% of the input results in 80% of the output, however you want to put it, which means that 80% of the work and time and effort we put into things is essentially wasted. It's only going to ever give you a 20% kick up in value or in outcome.
Yeah, to top up to 100%.
Oof.
Ouch.
Ouch. That is painful. And just to note at the top, this is not a mathematical rule. Everything in life is a continuum. So this is very much just to really get us thinking and challenging in 2024 how much effort and how many things we put on our plate.
And when you understand this principle, which we really encourage you to wrap your heads around this with us, you kind of can't unsee it and then it'll click and then we can start to take action and do stuff about it. So for example, here's some really simple examples. If you were to open up your phone and look at your texts, your conversations, the majority of your texts and conversations will come from just a handful of your contacts.
So true. And most of them are in text groups that have really funny names.
It's true. WhatsApp
I've got
groups.
Wolfpack and Trash Bags.
Trash bags.
That's
a good one.
Text?
Just a good one. What's that?
Your family chat, is that called, or is it
family? We're just family.
Yeah, family.
Yeah. Just another one is that, we just a few of our clothes and accessories get the lion's share of our use, even though we have so much stuff. And we possibly, for, many of us, we feel like we need more. We need to get the new outfit for that. You're probably not going to wear it and you're going to go back to your 20% faves.
Absolutely. And I think for overachievers, which I actually think that's such a funny word now I see it in context of the 80-20 rule, overachievers, we achieve it and then we do more, which is what is such a casually thrown around term, and it really defines
Describes it.
the problem with not following the 80-20 rule. But a lot of overachievers in the Powrsuit community, because there's a bunch of us, would look at things at work and in life where we go, we want this thing to happen. So we're thinking about, we want to throw our kid a great birthday, or we want to have a really cool culture at work. And what we do is we throw ourselves 100% in. We organize the birthday. We do all the shopping. We do all the prep. We do all the washing up. We're running around. Same with the committee, a social club committee. We join the committee. We run the committee. We do the planning for the events. We buy the food. We organize the cards. If you follow the 80-20 principle, you would go, what is the most effective 20% that I can do to deliver the best outcome? So it could be, I'm planning the party and I'm giving a list to someone else to go and buy it.
Yeah, because I think
stuff.
even knowing that in a committee, probably 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work, even just knowing that will stop you from being one of those 20 that are just that pick up the slack and do everything.
Absolutely.
It's all about setting boundaries, which we'll talk about in a minute. But
we often say that if not you, who, when we're talking about promotions, like if you're not going for the promotion, who will get it? And often that's enough to trigger people into going for the promotion. And I think that's the same thing with these committees, right? If you're looking around and going, wait a second, am I the only one putting my hand up to do everything? There are other people on the committee that can put their hand up.
Yeah, agreed. How about in your life? What does that look like, putting the 80-20 rule into practice and kind of writing that mix a little bit to save your time, energy, and pain?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a continuous improver, and one challenge with my personality, I think, or it's my star sign or something, is that I over invest in other people's lives and in a way that skews towards negative. So one of my friends has a problem. 20-year-old me would have dropped everything. I would have been the shoulder to cry on. I would have helped them come up with solutions. I would have dropped everything and spent days of mental anguish worrying about them. 30-something-year-old me realized I had to stop doing that because it wasn't helping them and it was burdening me. So now I go, what is the thing that I can do to be most helpful? Which often starts with asking that exact question and then limiting it to that and letting it go. A good friend of mine says, let it wash over you and just commit to that 20% because you're adding a huge amount of value without getting myself in knots and wasting my happiness and time.
I have a very similar one, and that's, you can tell from the accent, I'm not from New Zealand. Yes, and so we have a lot of people from North America visiting us over the holiday period. So our house for 2 months often ends up accepting guests. And what I've noticed, and I didn't set an intention for New Year's, take a look at our last podcast of last year. We say, don't set them, forget it. Don't set the resolutions. But I somehow naturally set this intention this year. And now I've recognized it and definitely doubling down and putting it into action, is that the 20%, which will result in the most joy of family visits, is I'm providing a home, a car, company. There's my fridge, company, an ear to hear how. But as for sorting out your logistics and sorting out your calendar and sorting out the things you need once you get here, kind of not my problem. So I've normally taken that on because I want everyone to have this incredible experience. But actually, I don't need to. It's probably goes unnoticed or underappreciated. Then I feel underappreciated. So this holiday season, I'm just like, sure, come, sort yourself here. Just let us know when you'll be here.
And she's done a fantastic job. I've noticed it. And I feel like we've both noticed in ourselves reduction in stress.
Yeah.
To the point that we're so relaxed we couldn't do this podcast. I think the other one I've used to spend a lot of time on is I used to feel so guilty about seeing people. Like people would be like, can we catch up? Can we do this? And I'd say yes. And I think to that sort of point about the 80% of your texts come from 20% of the people in your life, I also believe that quote about you're the average of the 5 closest people in your life. I've started to get a lot more thoughtful about what groups and meetings and catch-ups add 80% of the value to my life, and starting to scrap the ones that take up time and maybe don't add value or take away my energy and joy.
Yeah.
I know I'm grimacing as I say that because it sounds really mean, but it's actually a boundary now that I've started to get a lot better at.
And a well-deserved one as well, because Gosh, life is short, isn't it? And a final one for me is that many will know that I had ups and downs of trying to be healthier this year in 2023, and that's been going well. But one thing I have learned in this process, that did you know that for any type of kind of big health kick, it actually is more about the food you're putting in your body than exercise. And so let's say I'm like, I'm going to go on this big health kick and do 100% of the things in the food arena, 100% of the things in the wellness and the getting the sleep and the whatever arena, and then all the things for exercising. It's just not going to happen. So I actually just chose to focus on food. I continue to go out for walks, but it doesn't become a thing like I have to do this walk, or I have to go for a run, or I have to whatever. It actually is just like, I'm just going to focus on the 20% that actually takes the 80% of that health. And it's actually just the food you put in your mouth. And that's not anything about cutting it back. It's just substituting some good food and real food for not so good food and unhealthy food.
I love it. And I think to continue the exercise thing, because I'm also on a health kick, my girlfriend and I have been lifting. I'm like, swole. Is it swole? I keep admiring my arms in the mirror, being like, look, I've done 2 weightlifting sessions. However, she bought 2 kettlebells from Kmart, and we can get 80% of the value we need from those 2 kettlebells. Then we could have gotten a whole array of different weights and equipment, and
Gym
ended up
memberships.
over investing in it. And we went, how do we get 80% of the benefit? We're not going to get 100% of the benefits. We don't have all the little weights and the little exercise equipment, but like, let's just get those 2 and get started.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was a great light bulb moment for me, is we have some of the gear and no idea.
So should we chat a little bit about the framework, and maybe I'll kick off with someone else's framework. Great. This is from a podcast called Lead with Less, and her name is Tash Peters, and she's a coach. And this particular episode, which I was listening to research for this podcast episode, was about minimum viable planning. And I liked how she explained that you are in a survival season and or an expansionary season. And we would have said that a lot of Powrsuitors at the end of last year were in survival season. And we even found ourselves going, just get to the end of the year, you've got a month to recoup and to recharge. And so recognizing that that can be triggered by the time of year, it can be triggered by too much on your plate, it can be triggered by a family emergency or a health emergency, whatever that might be, we have these seasons we move in and out of. When in survival season, this is where you go minimum viable planning. And the way she explains to do it is you start with life sections. And so that might look like a section for work, a section for family, a section for, I don't know, home, a section for health, a section for, wealth. I don't know, wealth and finances. And then you just write down all the things that you are doing. So home, it might be I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm picking up the kids. For family, it might be the pickups. It might be organizing their sports or music or trips. Could be your social life. It could be all the things at work, and get down to the critical few. So this is where you go, what are the things I need to do to move through the day? So it could be that the kids have to get from A to B. So that might be a critical few on that kids thing. The cooking, do you have to be cooking all the meals? Can you look maybe for during survival season to outsource that, to ask for help, to admit to friends that you need a bit of a hand, because that's what friends are for. Same thing with work. Does this need to be done? And this is, I think, where an additional critical layer needs to come over top and be like, does it really? And who said so? And why? And what would happen if it didn't get done?
And I like that as a framework, because if you believe in this principle, which I think we've just given a whole bunch of examples, and you will all notice them as you go through your day, you actually do believe that there is a ton of waste of padding in the stuff we do. So in every one of those sections or life areas, there is padding there. Mm-hmm. There is. And I was thinking, as you were saying, in that survival season, one thing that a lot of us struggle with is trying to add more goals to that. And we know someone who has just had a pretty rough diagnosis, that she is doing an incredible job of working on her health. And I commented the other day saying, that's your goal right now. You don't have to set other goals. You don't have to set life goals. Or your goal is to get through this and to look after yourself. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, that's your goal, is to get out of that. That you don't have to achieve X, Y, and Z, because that is a huge achievement to get out of that, which helps you if you are a overachieving goal setter and you always need to be working towards something. That is your 80%. If you can get through that, you will achieve 80% of what you need to achieve.
Yeah.
Adding on running a marathon or cooking all your meals is going to give you very little extra on top of just reducing that load. And I think vice versa, if you're in that expansionary season, the fastest way to hit your goals and get where you want to go is by decluttering some of the stuff that is not adding as much value. Like, we are wanting to launch our next product, and we are wanting to launch a scalable product that we can start to get global expansion from. So if we want to do that as quickly as possible, we have to be ruthless about the stuff we're not working on. There's a million things we could be working on. Like, our to-do list is quite long, but we have to look at that and go, and we're expanding. What are the things we can cut that actually only add 20% of the value?
Yeah.
And we have to focus on this 80%, which is launching this product. So starting to have that framework, I really like it, because you start to just go, oh yeah, that's not gonna get me that 80%. It's just gonna give me 10% bonus or a very small amount.
And I've picked up on a few threads there. The first is that the ability to prioritize, and that's that critical few, like what actually is the most important thing. Because you know how we always, particularly as women, it's like we have to do this, and it might be to, I don't know, keeping up with the Joneses, or display this idea of that everything is perfect and then I can do everything and I am a superwoman, and the superwoman syndrome. So it's this concept of going, oh, no, you don't actually have to do everything. What are the things you need to do? So there's prioritization in there. And then the execution, so important, that it is about boundaries and actually being able to go, this is all I can do right now. And this can be in a work context as well. So either I need to delegate to someone else, or we're going to push this deadline to here, but these are the must-dos for these reasons. What do you think? How do you think we can get this done, for this time frame, or do we need extra help? So there's boundaries in there. We've done another podcast, I'll put in the resources, on how to actually, stick and enforce your boundaries. And then the final thing is delegation. And if you've got someone to delegate to, or just full stop, lower the quality. We talked a lot about that in the newsletter this week.
It's worth reading that in parallel to this, because we're talking about cutting things out, and the second part is reducing the quality, which we've covered in there.
Yeah. So delegation, what can you get off your plate right now? And either, what is that concept of like stop, start doing? No.
Start doing, stop doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite a common, what do I want to start doing more of?
Yeah.
And what do I want to stop doing?
Yeah.
The stuff that's not serving you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think, again, just to reiterate, we're not talking about dropping the quality or letting people down. And on all the examples we've given, when you actually look at them, we have not had any impact, really, or very little impact. Like, maybe your family would love it if their entire trip was handed to them on a plate, but it's such a small thing that it's not, that they probably wouldn't have even noticed. And you have saved so much effort and energy that you feel much more relaxed. And so I feel like all of these things, we're not saying be mediocre by any means. We can't stand mediocre. But we are saying this stuff is stuff that's wasted. It's pure waste. And we don't want to crawl to the end of 2024. We want to leapfrog into the holidays energetic, or at least in a sustainable level of stress.
Well, and I think it's actually strategic to be doing this. And we talk about this a lot, is, does this work move the needle? Focus on that, and all the other stuff. How is it that you can say no, get it off your plate, say not this season? What are the things that are moving the needle for that critical area in your life right now? You focus on that. And in fact, you should be doing that in expansionary times too, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I feel like I've got a good example from the weekend. We were just talking about it before. We've just come back from holiday last night. Debacle, couldn't get into the house. But cleaning up the holiday home. And there's a list of chores that need to be done just to get it to good standard. And instead, I found myself spending an hour trying to scrub, that soap scum on your shower doors. So I didn't do any of my chores. I was just distracted by doing this other completely it didn't add really any value. It didn't even work. I got joy out of it because I love cleaning, and I was experimenting with different things, but it led to Kyla having to do all the rest of it because I was distracted. So that is a great example of when you're not mindful, we all just get off on little tangents and we waste time.
I know.
Sorry,
I think
Kyla.
let's go into a few areas of our lives and come up with some examples, shall we? Just putting you on the spot here. So the first is how you might declutter your personal kind of effects in household. What would that look like with the 80-20?
Yeah, I had to do that recently. So firstly, I feel like the rule around don't buy things until you've had a bit of a break. So I don't know if everyone's heard of this great financial tip. If you want to buy something online or you really want something, write it down and then wait 24 hours. It's all you have to do. And in 24 hours, because quite often we're sort of propelled by that dopamine hit of shopping, in 24 hours, you still feel desperately want it, buy it then. So that's a really easy way to stop clutter happening. When it comes to decluttering, I had to recently look at, what sparks joy in my wardrobe and find things that didn't spark joy, which was a lot of dresses that no longer fitted me, but fortunately fit Kristen. So I suppose I can say I cut a lot of effort by just palming them off onto you. Yeah. But I just took the stuff that was like, I never wear, get rid of it. Do one drawer at a time, whatever. Yeah. Just don't overcook it. Yeah. For me, that was the easiest path, because it does feel overwhelming. And again, you can get caught up clearing out one box of junk when actually you can save half a wardrobe by just chucking out some big bulky things that you no longer wear.
And I love another economics term called utility. And I was researching that word a little bit last night because it's like a boring word, but it's also so powerful. And it kind of has got all this connotation of like powerful and successful and joy and like usefulness of whatever the product or the thing is that you have. And so it's almost looking at everything in how much utility does this provide to me? And I saw some TikToks the other day where people were talking about the utility of their shoes, and they had very expensive boots that were about $2,000, but they said, I've been wearing them, again, going back to you probably wear 20% of your clothing and the rest of it just sits there. But this person had worn these boots for 6 years. They're beautiful and got down to probably $5 per wear. And so the utility of these boots were really high, and the joy and the meaning and everything in them. So I like that concept of looking at our lives and personal effects that way as well.
Almost like the value you get out of them. Unlike the 20 pairs of heels I have in the bottom of my wardrobe that I still haven't thrown out, but also never wear.
You'll get there.
What about managing your time better?
Yeah, that is calendar. And every power session we go to, we come out with a handful of people who all they need to do is manage their calendar and fiercely manage it. Now, I'm not just saying add more stuff to it. I'm like fiercely protecting your time. And quite often our time is managed, certainly for 40 hours a week, by this calendar, and that's associated with our email, and it's where meetings get slotted in. And if you just think elbows up, protect your time, because 20% of those meetings are probably useful, and the time in those meetings, 80% isn't. And so can you shorten meetings? Can you do a huge cull of reoccurring meetings? Do you need to be at the meeting? Can you get notes taken for you? So on and so forth. Can you ask the organizer to shorten them or to decrease the frequency of them? So I would suggest time management all starts with, at least in your workday, and certainly possibly in managing household is getting really fiercely protective of your time and your calendar. And is that where your effort should be?
I love it. And so I think what we're talking about here is constraints, and time is a constraint. And we don't treat it like that a lot of the time, especially at work. We just sort of keep adding more and more stuff. And so I kind of feel like on the calendar front, one really easy thing to do is to say, I don't want to spend more than 10 hours a week on, again, not hard and fast rules, but like just set yourself the challenge in meetings, or I don't want to spend more than 5 hours a week updating people. So what do you need to cut to make sure that you hit under that time? And I think when you start thinking about constraints, you start prioritizing naturally, because you're like, I've only got this amount of time. So what is the most important things to get done in that time? Yeah. And this is all waste we're talking about here. Yeah. So what is the stuff that's wasted that you can cut?
What about relationships?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things we do is, like I say with the cleaning thing, we have different chores that we like. So rather than both of us having the mental load and taking on all the tasks, we split up based on what we enjoy doing. Kyla likes cooking. I never think about cooking. It's completely off my plate. Whereas I used to sort of struggle and feel like I needed to contribute and spend a bunch of time on it. And it was wasted effort and energy because she likes doing it. And sort of vice versa for cleaning. I'm quite happy to do it, as per scrubbing the shower doors. Yeah. So I feel like that's a really simple tactic to just go divide and conquer and just let the other stuff go from your brain. Like, you do not need to think about that stuff. And I found that incredibly valuable in my life.
And I think there's a few ways to look at it in terms of in your relationship as well. It's probably the same small issues in any relationship that are contributing to the biggest pain in a relationship. So it could be, a lot of people talk about money, or they talk about the share of the household duties, or whatever that might be. So if you were just to tackle one of those issues, you might get maximum benefit of your relationship in 2024.
Yeah, I like that. And I think some of those examples are, those irritating habits that all of us have because we have different standards for what we like. People who leave their clothes on the floor, people who leave the toilet seat up. Just tackling one, like not having a big bust up, but just being like, let's fix this one thing.
Yeah.
And like we might get a huge kick of joy from it.
Yeah.
I think as a leader, should we finish that as a leader?
Yeah.
Because, there's some easy wins here too.
Yeah, well, I think that as a leader, particularly if you're running a project or a team, recognizing that 20% of the people are probably doing most of the work. And so really just making sure that work is divided fairly, that output and effort is, spread across a group and fairly, and just being really conscious of that.
Yeah, and I like that because if you even change those words out to value, like most people, if you speak to them, say they're massively busy at work. So if you in a group and you're assuming 20% of people add 80% of the value, is your work contributing to that value? Is it contributing to that 80%, or are you distracted on all sorts of stuff? And something to think about when you're looking at your team members, they're probably very busy, but is it on the right work? And can you probably step in maybe and help with a little bit of the time management and prioritization? I think also as a leader, very useful to think about managing people. So people leadership. Often, as with most things, 20% of your people will be taking up 80% of your time. How can you start to put in place new things to reduce that? So is it more regular meetings? Is it changing how you interact? Is it not taking on their problems and pushing back? What are the things that you can do to reduce that time?
Yeah, love that. Should we end there?
Yeah, I mean, we have done this before. So. I think we waffled on a bit more last time.
We could carry on, but I think we will end there. So please do take care of yourselves. Set up some really great new habits as it relates to this. Have a scan across your life. If you're in survival season, we've got your back. If you're in expansionary season, we've got your back. Carry on. And then please do
save yourself some time.
Yeah,
I reckon the one action that I've taken from round one is. Start this week. What can you cut 5% of in your day? Like, can you save an hour today on something?
Yeah.
And just focus on that. And just this week, kind of look 5 to 10% reduction. Like, that should be easy if we think we are wasting 80% of our time on some of the stuff. What can you do 5% less of? Yeah. And give it a crack and see how that will add up to a decent amount of extra time.
Agreed. And give us 5 stars.
Even if we're still sloppy.
No, I think we did this one.
Did we do better?
I think we did.
We self-rated ourselves 5 stars.
Yeah, we did. So we'd love your reviews and 5 stars as well. And I guess we'll just catch you next time.
Bye.